It's fall. Fall is here. Okay, so I am clearly in a bit of a weird mood, but honestly, I just wanted to bring a little sunshine before we hop into this week's topic, because if I'm being real, it really gets to me. So let's remember that fall is here. We have a lot to be grateful for, including everything that we're about to learn today. Let's hop in. This is separation policy at our borders.
This morning, we have new information on the Trump administration's impact on families trying to cross the U.S. southern border. Lawyers say they cannot find the parents of, listen to this number, 545 children.
2,000. That's the number of children that are estimated to have been separated from their parents at our borders between April 19th and May 31st of this year. Border security is a bipartisan issue, and it has been agreed on by both parties as a measure for concern. What we're going to break down today are the policies that have led to the separation of countless families at our borders. Literally, countless. The zero tolerance policy was passed by soon-to-be former President Donald Trump.
The dilemma is that if you're weak, if you're really pathetically weak, the country's going to be overrun with millions of people. And if you're strong, then you don't have any heart. That's a tough dilemma. We're keeping families together, but we have to keep our borders strong. We will be overrun with crime and with people that should not be in our country.
Under this policy, any migrant, including asylum seekers that entered the country in any port that wasn't a legal port, was then criminally persecuted. This meant the separation of tons of asylum seekers from their families at our borders. This approach meant the systemic separation of newly arriving migrants from their children at our borders. The problem with this approach, one of the problems with this approach is that while there is a very clear process for detaining and separating these migrants from their families, there is no policy to handle putting them back together. So what protections do migrants have when seeking asylum in our country, or is it just like the Wild West of civil liberties? Well, there is this little thing called due process. Procedural due process refers to the constitutional requirement that when the federal government acts in such a way where it denies a person of life, liberty, or property interest, that person must be given notice, the opportunity to be heard, and a decision by a neutral decision maker. The neutral decision maker is usually a judge or jury. Seeking asylum is perfectly legal in this country as the self-proclaimed land of the free, home of the brave.
The legal definition of a refugee is someone who isn't able to live safely in their home country, or has a really strong reason to fear that they won't be safe if they stay. Persecution that is racial, religious, political, or national, or targeting what's called a particular social group.
Someone who's been persecuted can apply for refugee status in their home country or in the first country that they flee to, where they might apply in a refugee camp, for example.
An asylee is a refugee. It's just that they've already arrived at another country, like the United States, and fear going home.
The American Civil Liberties Union challenged the Trump administration on these border policies. Such conduct, if true, as it is assumed to be on the present motion, is brutal, offensive, and fails to comport with traditional notions of fair play and decency. That was said by Judge Dana M. Sabrau of the Southern District of California in his 25-page opinion piece. So who can help us with this? Who is there to help these people? Well, we know that the Department of Homeland Security was formed after 9/11 to protect us from terrorism, so what do they have to say about this? Homeland Security Secretary Kristen Nielsen has personally tweeted that there was no separation policy and that families were not being separated at the border.
Parents at the border rages on. A pediatrician who visited a detention center says the kids face lifelong psychological damage. Others call it child abuse. But Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen isn't backing down, saying she will not apologize. If you cross the border illegally, you will be prosecuted.
But let's be honest, that doesn't surprise anybody. Do you want to hear something surprising? In November of 2019, the DHS watchdog published a report that stated the administration lacked the technology necessary to track 26,000 children who had been separated from their parents at our southern borders under the zero tolerance policy. DHS ultimately reported only about 3,000 children being separated from their parents, but the Inspector General says that this is a gross underestimation. So let's just be very clear, this zero tolerance policy went into action without the infrastructure to sustain it. Again, not very surprising. The latest figure we have is that 19,000 asylum seekers are waiting on the Mexican side of the border for their chance to seek asylum in the US. Look, we're not trying to say that Trump is the only president to ever use this tactic. In 2016, a large number of Haitian immigrants arrived, mostly in Tijuana, and so that port got backed up, and then metering was used then. But they addressed it, and eventually that backlog was dealt with.
Gathered around dinner tables, groups of Haitians, newly welcomed to the United States, celebrate their newfound freedom. Jean Ronnie stepped through the doors of the San Ysidro port of entry on May 31st.
This is why I come here, because I think that here can help me to have a better life.
And there's a feeling that this administration hasn't done enough to address their backlog, to put more people there so that they can process the asylum seekers and give the thousands that are waiting at the Mexican border their chance to legally seek asylum. Attorneys for the migrants at detention camps are struggling to keep up with the number of detainees. And here's a little statistic for you. About 80% of migrants don't have an attorney to represent them at all. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but in the land of the free and the home of the brave, where you're supposed to get a, fair and just trial, seems a little off to me.
Are you a little nervous this morning? See? Do you understand what these proceedings here in court are all about? You know what a lawyer is? No? Do you have a lawyer? No?
And this is all without even discussing the conditions of the detention facilities.
Vale, y Elena, sí temblaba. Que el otro niño tenía la sed temblando y yo no quería que le agarrara frío. Dice, denme una cobija que yo tengo mucho frío. No, más tarde después dije.
We say all this to say that there is some serious change that needs to be made in how this country deals with border security. We do have a new president-elect. And so we wanted to look into what he had to say about immigration. So far, on his website, joebiden.com, it says, as president, Biden will forcefully pursue policies that safeguard our security, provide a fair and just system that helps us grow and enhance our economy and secure our cherished values. He will take urgent action to undo Trump's damage and reclaim America's values. B, modernize America's immigration system. C, welcome immigrants into our communities. D, reassert America's commitment to asylum seekers and refugees. Tackle the root causes of irregular migration. And implement effective border screening. Now, all of this sounds good. All of this sounds like it could move us in a very important direction. But what we have to do now is hold him to it. Don't stop paying attention. Decide what you want, how you want our immigration system to look, and demand that of our lawmakers. This is the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's time we act like it.